welcome to tonight's Planning Commission meeting. By way of introduction, we are a deciding body that has been appointed by your town council to make recommendations and decisions on land use matters within the town of Los Gatos. We have 3 items on today's agenda, and we certainly welcome your attendance and encourage your participation. If you would like to speak tonight, we ask that you submit a speaker's card. I don't happen to have one right now, but it's the yellow card that is located behind the chamber benches. Certainly all the applicants need to fill one out, and if you'd like to speak on any item, please do so also. Okay, and with that, Ms. Rooney, do you mind doing roll call tonight?
My pleasure. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Talasford.
Here.
Commissioner Erickson is absent. Vice Chair Jensen.
Here.
And Commissioner Sayak.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. And then Commissioner Bourgeois, do you mind doing Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Thank you. So in our staff packets, we do have draft minutes from July 13, 2011. I'd like to mention that I was not at that meeting. However, I did I watched the tape and I reviewed the minutes, and so I feel like I am capable of voting on it. Commissioner Talasford?
And I also was not here on July 13th, but I reviewed the video and reviewed the minutes, and I can vote as well.
Okay. Any comments, Commissioner Bourgeois?
I was going to move to approve the minutes of July 13th as is.
Okay, and do I have a second? Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are now at written communications. At this time, I do not see anything, and just want to confirm no written communications.
No written communications.
Okay, great. And we do, however, have requested continuances. Item 2, which is 135 Riviera Drive, has requested a continuance to August 24, 2011.
Correction. September 14th, 2011.
September, okay. Let me make that note on my own notes. And are there any questions of staff as for the continuance, Commissioner?
I was just wondering what the agenda looked like on September 14th.
I actually was going to go over that during director's comments, but let me take a quick look and see. Lots of items. Lots of items.
How about the 28th?
28th, right now, we only have one item. And so my sense is we're going to be moving some off the 14th. We just have a lot of items scheduled, so we'll probably be moving some to the 28th.
So what, when this motion is made, what's the date that we should?
It's the 14th. It's a
September
continued
14th.
item, so it would be first to be heard as a continued item.
Okay. Okay. Any other commissioners? Go ahead.
Do we have an option to move it to the 28th where there's only one other item on? Why is we being told that it's the 14th?
Well, I would suggest that let staff go ahead and handle that part of the agenda, and we'll go ahead and move things as need be. We will. I don't want to, I don't know what agreements have been made, what decisions have been made between the applicant and planning staff, and controlling the agenda is our responsibility. So we'll go ahead and take care of that and make sure that we've tried to balance that out.
Excuse me.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Motion then if staff is taking care of this, or is this something that is in our discretion?
Well, we certainly need a motion to continue it since it's officially on our agenda.
I just don't understand if staff does something that we can't go against. I do not understand that.
Well, I think the Planning Commission has discretion. I'm just suggesting that we have a lot of items that we're managing right now. We're trying to move them to agendas to be able to balance out the agenda. I'm not sure what discussions have taken place between the applicant and planning staff. My sense is that was a topic for them, and I wasn't privy to those conversations. However, I do have control over what's on the 14th and can move things to the 28th. However, the Planning Commission has discretion to move that to the 28th that they would like.
Okay, I just want to establish that. I don't mind keeping it on the 14th. And in fact, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks as of September 27th. But I would be happy to have it go to the 14th. I was just trying to establish what the procedures were. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bourgeois? question or a motion?
Can I make a motion?
Please do.
I'd like to move to continue item 135 Riviera Drive to the meeting of September 14th, and I'm confident that the staff can arrange the agendas of those two meetings.
Okay. Do I have a second? Commissioner Telesford?
Yeah, I'll second that. If I could add something, though, to your motion? I'm not even sure if I should add this now or just make it as a comment. I'm going
Why
to
don't
make
we
it as a
hear it?
comment. I'm going to second his motion, but make a comment if I could. So after reviewing the Riviera Terrace on July 13th, reviewing that video, I realized that it seems to be a great concern from the commission about story poles. And it occurred to me with the discussion that ensued that what we are missing to really evaluate this, and actually it's an essential piece, is the context of the present and current buildings with the newly proposed buildings. We have no visual of that at all. We don't have a visual as far as mass, but we certainly don't have a visual as far as how it looks together, because they're both very different from each other. And I think it's important that we have that. So I would like to make a request that the applicant provide us with some kind of, not a rendering, but a digitized photographic document that would show that. That technology is at our fingertips, and the fact that we don't use it is a crime, especially in making these big decisions. So that's my comment.
Any other comments? Commissioner Bourgeois?
I would just like to say I still don't think that's a completely adequate substitute for the story poles, and with the amount of open space they have on that property, I'm struggling to understand why they can't at least erect one unit of story poles. So I would not want that to be in lieu of. So
Was that request made for a story pole before?
Through the chair, I believe some comments at the last meeting were made that we would have appreciated story poles, but.
Correct, but I don't recall watching a specific request.
Right, there was none, I didn't remember. So I would then, in my comments, like to request both if possible. They both add so much to our decision, and they help us make and render a better decision.
Commissioner Jensen, comment?
I just want to agree with Commissioner Telesford, Commissioner Bourgeois, and chairing the last meeting. We did ask staff why the applicant was allowed not to put poles up, but I agree with Commissioner Bourgeois that the answer was something to do with safety, but there's a lot of open land there where you could put story poles up, or balloons, which aren't as expensive and could be done before September 14th, and it would be a benefit to us and the community, I think.
Any other comments? I'd like to comment before I call the question, since we are taking a tally, that I also would like to see that. I'm particularly concerned at the visual coming from the trail, and so I'd like to see how that relates to the creek itself. Okay, with all that, I'll call the question. All those in favor for continuance, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It passes 5-0. And we are now at subcommittee reports. In addition to sitting on the Planning Commission, all of us also serve on at least one other subcommittee. We have the Historic Preservation Committee, the Community Development Advisory Committee, and the General Plan Committee. And I believe since we last met, there have been two subcommittees that have met. The first is the North 40 Advisory Committee, and I'd ask Commissioner Bourgeois to please provide us an update.
Thank you. The General Plan Committee members from the Planning Commission also sit on the North 40 Specific Plan Update Subcommittee, and we met last Thursday. We had quite a long meeting. One of the things we went through was the economic analysis that the consultants have done on sales tax leakage and what sort of uses from an economic standpoint could best be accommodated on the site. We also went through a land use planning exercise where we were divided into teams, and if we had our druthers, what would we like to see on the site as far as site design, and that consumed a large portion of the meeting. In fact, we didn't get to some of the agenda items at the tail end, so there's going to be another meeting, and all of these meetings are open to the public. If anyone is concerned about what is going on at the North 40, I encourage you to attend these meetings. There's a lot of important decisions being made there. So, thanks.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bourgeois, I know a lot of people are following it. Is there a place that they can go to if they want to see some of the materials or read any information?
We actually have that on our town website. There's a North 40 page.
Thank you. And I believe today the Community Development Advisory Committee met?
Well, yes, we call it the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee, but that's close enough.
I'm
Thank
making
you.
up things.
Commissioner O'Donnell and I sit on that committee, as well as two of our council people. And today we heard two cases come before us. One was at 16212 Las Gatas Boulevard, which is on the corner of Las Gatas Boulevard and Shannon Road. And it was a request to go to rezone a .96 acre property from commercial highway to construct 11 new single-family residences. Everybody, the commissioners and the council people gave their input after the presentation and really had a lot of concern about the loss, again, of some retail, the positioning of those homes on that very busy corner, the intersection itself, ingress and egress from the property. We talked about that a lot, and the applicant really appreciated this verbal communication with them and giving them our ideas. Then we heard another project. Oh, Commissioner O'Donnell, do you want to have it? No. We heard another project at 420 Blossom Hill Road. It was requesting a review of conceptual plans for a planned development to rezone a 2.9 acre property from and to demolish existing office buildings and construct approximately 37 three-story rental units. That property, it said rental, you're right, and it wasn't. It is for sale. Thank you. It was corrected at the meeting. Thank you. That property is, let's see, how do I say this? If you're going east on on Las Gatas Boulevard, it's right after the overpass freeway. It's that immediate left-hand turn before you go up the hill, the Roberts Road. Does that make sense? Is it east? Did I say west? What did I say? Was I right?
It depends. You can go either way.
Yeah.
The common way is to go west towards Vasona.
Right.
Right before you get to the freeway, it is the old Higgins Route office building on the right-hand
Right.
lower side with all the trees. That having been said,
sorry.
you're doing a wonderful job.
Okay. So anyway, the point is, it's on Blossom Hill Road, and it's a little, really, most people probably wouldn't even look at it unless you lived here for as long as we have. But they wanted to develop it into housing units and take out the offices that are there. Now, all the offices there are, at the moment, are rented or leased. And the discussion was, and I think from all of the people present, from the council and the commission, is that we were concerned with loss of this office space, especially because we need that incubator office space that we would lose if this was turned into that kind of a development, plus the fact that the ingress and egress to that site is impossible. There were other issues as well. So, and I think they appreciated that. And I think I don't know if they appreciated it, but I think they were appreciating our honesty.
Okay.
Fortunately, normally they at least seem to appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess we'll look forward to seeing those two projects. We are now at verbal communications. This is the portion of our meeting where anyone in the audience can speak on anything that is not on the agenda item. I do not have a speaker card, so I'm assuming that no one here would like to speak. And so we are going to move towards consent. Before we move to consent, I believe Commissioner Bourgeois, you have a statement to make?
I do. The applicant in item number 1, Yoga Source Partners, is a source of income for my wife, so I'm going to have to recuse myself from this item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, we have one item under consent. So this item will not be heard unless it is pulled for discussion. And I do not have any speaker cards to have this pulled. And commissioners, is there anyone who would like to pull it or a motion for consent? Commissioner Jensen.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, which is item number 1, conditional use permit application U-11-009 with the findings and conditions that are contained in our staff report, and just say thank you to the applicant for painting the building and occupying it. I drive by there almost every day.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Telesfor?
I'll second that.
Okay, any comments? Okay, all those in favor of consent, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So it passes 4-0. And we now move on to agenda item number 3. And if we could just call Commissioner Bourgeois.
Oh, they did come. I was wondering who they, I asked Jennifer, she,
Welcome back, Commissioner. So we are now at agenda item number 3, which is architecture and site application S-10-034, variance application V-10-001, and the property is located at 61 Ellenwood Avenue. And Ms. Mosley, will you provide tonight's staff report?
I will. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. The subject property, located at 61 Ellenwood Avenue, is a 14,363 square foot interior lot zoned R18. It currently contains a 2,280 square foot two-story residence with a 540 square foot detached garage. The property owner has submitted an application to construct additions to the first and second floor of the residence and to demolish the existing detached garage and to construct a new attached garage in a similar location. While the existing garage has non-conforming front and side setbacks, the removal of the garage would require the new garage to comply with the current setbacks for the R18 zone. In order to provide the layout and access to the proposed cellar below the garage, the applicant is requesting a variance to project into the required front and side yard setbacks. If the variance is approved, the proposed setbacks would establish the allowed side and front setbacks for any potential future additions to the house. Now, when I say side, I'm only referring to the side directly adjacent to the property line there. It would not apply to the other side of the residence as well. The applicant has provided a written justification for the variance, citing the location and style of the existing house, the large deodar cedar tree, and the angle of the front property line as reasons for granting the variance. While the new garage will be similar in location to the existing non-conforming garage, it is staff's opinion that a conforming attached garage could be constructed with a similar layout in relation to the existing house, while providing a similar and adequate setback to the large cedar. While a conforming garage may require modification or elimination of the proposed cellar, the garage could be relocated 3 feet to the east, while providing 2 separate stepped garage doors similar to the neighbor's garage at 63 Ellenwood Avenue. An additional option is that the applicant would be permitted to maintain the existing garage and expand to the east while maintaining the existing non-conforming setbacks. Based on this analysis and the fact that covered parking is not required by town code, staff is unable to provide the Planning Commission the required findings in section 29.20.170 of the town code for granting a variance. Based on information provided by the applicant, it appears that there may be several structures with non-conforming front and side setbacks in the immediate vicinity. While this addresses the compatibility of the proposed design, it does not directly address the required findings for granting a variance. As a result, staff recommends the Planning Commission deny the variance application and remand the architecture and site application to the Development Review Committee for final action with the direction to redesign the garage to conform to the requirements of the zone. This completes staff's report. You're here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner O'Donnell?
On page 4, the top of the page, the second full sentence says, based on this analysis and the fact that the covered parking is not required by town code. I'm not quite sure what that means. Could you just, when you say covered parking is not required, you mean they don't have to have a garage?
Correct. Parking is required for single-family residences, but there is no requirement that they be covered in any way. They just are required to be
If there were such a
separately.
requirement, how would that change anything? They already have a garage.
Correct.
I don't understand the sequence. What does that mean legally, or what does it mean in any event, whether it's required or not required?
It just means that in order to comply with town code, they would not have to construct the garage that would require a variance. So they could demo the garage and just provide 2 separately accessible parking spaces in lieu of, and there would be no variance required.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aside from its belief that findings can't be made in support of a variance, does staff have any objection to the design? I'm not talking about setbacks, I'm not talking about anything else. I know it went through Historic Preservation Committee. Aside from its belief that that findings for variance can't be made, does staff have any objections to this design?
No, if the Planning Commission were to be able to make the findings to grant the variance, staff would support the architecture and site application.
Any other questions? Commissioner Telesfor?
Sorry. So town doesn't require a garage. And if I understand this correctly, and as soon as this place becomes larger than 0 feet, then it has to be 20 feet? The garage would have to be 20 feet? At least?
Well, they could provide a single-car garage and then an additional parking space that wouldn't have to necessarily be covered.
Okay.
But there are requirements for a single-car garage or a 2-car garage if you are trying to comply with town code.
And then one other question. In the report, under architecture and site on page 3, it says that, we're about second sentence. I'm just looking for the inches because there was a discrepancy here. It says, and does not meet required side setback of 5 feet. Existing garage is approximately 18 inches from the side property line. And I'd read on the architect's letter, I believe, that it was that one said 8 inches and one said 18. Can you clarify for me? Is it 18 or is it 8?
Are you asking for the required setback?
No, just what it presently is.
So presently, according to the applicant's plans, my understanding that it was 18 inches. The
Okay,
applicant
so
may be able
that was
to clarify if
they
there's...
probably forgot the one on the other letter. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I will now open the public hearing. The applicant, who is Mr. Gary Schlow, will have 5 minutes to speak, and if there is anyone else who would like to speak on the matter, just submit a speaker card, and if you do decide to speak, you'll have 3 minutes to do so. Okay? Right now, Mr. Schlow, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Gary Schlow. My office is at 213 Bean Avenue. I'm the architect for this project at 61 Ellenwood. I have with me Mr. Lambert, John Lambert, and Jay Plett from my office. I want to first thank staff for helping us work through somewhat of a complex project, although it maybe shouldn't have been so complex, but I want to thank them for now. I have a couple of overheads that I would like to just leave up there and maybe make some reference to it, but because I'm being timed here, I'm going to go through a short summarization of the project and then answer questions later. It's our intent to add the 1,351 square feet to the main level, including the upstairs and the basement. These areas, along with garage and cellar area, are reflected on sheet A1. We know that the existing west wall of the house encroaches into the setback as shown on the site plan, also on sheet A1. Sheet A2 reflects a similar encroachment of 6 neighboring houses along Ellenwood, And there's more information on that in Exhibit 4. I've shown the design objectives as listed on sheet 2 of 5. I won't get into their 6 line items there. My site constraint note should help to better understand the challenges we were faced with in developing this project. The town historical residential design guidelines played a key role in our design, although staff position was to convince us that a better plan was possibly by pushing the garage back into the main structure and eliminate the hallway in between the garage, what will be the new garage, and the house. I think we've convinced staff that our proposal is more innovative and sympathetic to the design. Many thoughts went into design and alternate designs. The story poles are in place and have helped everyone visualizing this project. Very little of the new structure is visible, and it will be virtually unnoticed from Ellenwood. Our conclusions have resulted in the design as we present it to you tonight. The variants as requested in this application seem to be fully understood, and both Town Code sections 29.20.150 and 29.20.170 are responded to in our variance consideration note, which is on sheet 5 of 5. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Schlow. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, Commissioner Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Schlow. Is the current garage up to code?
No, it's not. The code is not to code. It is not built. The physical size is not to code.
Aside from the fact that it's not 20 feet wide, are there other deficiencies in the construction of the garage? Is it old and falling down?
Yeah, the garage, we found, and there's not information on that here, but the structural slab and foundation of the garage has been basically condemned by geologists and by soils engineers, and it came all about because of a redwood that was growing on the side of the garage, and that's been removed. But that slab and the foundation is very much cracked up, and yeah.
Any other questions, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, I just want to understand perhaps a little better. One of the main issues anyway, seems to be your view that the connection between the garage and the house, sort of if I call it a hallway, that's wrong, but it helps me.
Yes.
So that's sort of a hallway, is important to your design. And apparently the staff feels, well, that could be, but you don't need it, and therefore if you could move the garage over. Could you respond? Give me both sides of that argument.
Yes, thank you for asking. We feel that the architectural style and the footprint of the existing house, and we've found this out through looking at Sanborn maps, that the basic part of the existing house that is there today was there before 1928. And then there was a garage at some other time, we can't determine, was added on to the front. And so there we have two structures that you could call at least the house a historical structure, the garage not so much historic. But I think we like the idea and the looks of the house the way it is, and we've made minor modifications to it. Historical HPC, they've given us the thumbs up on that house, and we just much prefer not to take that existing garage because it is a candidate for demolition, but to take that garage and move it any other place on the property. There's virtually there's virtually no place to put that garage other than where it is, within a foot this way or that way. And we do propose to move the new garage over to the east by 2 foot 6, 1 foot 2, yeah, not a lot, but we're fighting for dimensions here, and the structure, what is being called the hallway, is we feel very important to just the style of living that in that neighborhood and throughout the maybe the United States is connecting a garage to a house for safety. And one other item that is important is knowing the lack of physical space that the Lamberts have for their children to play in the back. There's so little area in the back and along the sides that we want to maintain a safe place for children to play. Of course, the children won't always be children, but that's another reason we wish to put the hallway in place so that it gives security to the homeowners. There's a number of houses you'll find up and down Ellenwood that have very large front yards, and more than not don't have large backyards. And I'm not suggesting that we're trying to conform to other designs, but this situation is pretty dire as far as not having a hallway versus having a hallway.
Commissioner Johnson?
I was curious whether I'm not sure whether you have or not, but in walking around there, are there other houses in that immediate area are there any houses in that immediate area that have an attached garage that you're aware of?
By attached, oh yes.
I'm talking about a traditional attached garage where you flip open your door and you walk into your living room.
There's a number of houses that have attached garages. There's more than not. I did a house 3 houses up from Lambert's house, Bob Chimenti's house. It has a garage, but it also has a tandem placed carport. Now that carport has a roof over it, but like Ms. Mosley says, you don't need a roof or walls around a parking place for a car. But back to the question, I think most of the cars or garages are attached to the existing structures.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I have another question relating to the drawing A6. You don't even need to look at it. I just want you to describe to me the cellar garage concept.
The cellar garage concept, well, it's the purpose of it is simply to keep cars off of the street, and there's a 2-car. We have only the width for a 2-car garage. We can't go 3 cars unless we get a lift and we create a space subterranean, and that's the primary reason that it's not for playing games or anything down there. It's for getting cars.
Explain to me how that works. It's a lift for 1 car or 2 cars or what?
It's a lift for 2 cars. Well, there's 2 lifts, but they're for side-by-side cars.
So the cars go into the garage and then they're lowered?
Yes. And then yes.
And then the space obviously in the garage is now empty?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, why are you doing that? I'm not objecting to it. What are you doing with the space that you've now opened up?
Well, I'm parking 4 cars in that garage instead of 2 cars.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have me very curious. So how is it that when I've lowered 2 cars down, then does a floor come and close?
Yes, there's a second floor there. And
Okay,
that's
is
for
this
2
all
cars.
stainless? What's this made out of, steel? I mean, I've never.
Oh, there's a lot of steel in it, yes.
Okay, I just am curious.
Certainly is.
What
Yeah,
is
that's
like
all
this?
there is in it, pretty much, is steel. Yeah. You've seen, or maybe you've seen these kind of lifts in I don't know if they're in San Francisco, they're in New York City. There's lifts that go more than two cars high.
Any other questions, Commissioner Telesforth?
Just one other question. The cedar deodar tree that's
Yes.
in the center of that property, it's been referred to, just wanted to ask you, with the alternate design that have been suggested to you, what would the impacts be? Could you refresh our memories on that?
Well, the alternate design, we're trying to stay a little further away from that deodora than the town arborist has suggested. By that, I mean 2 feet or so. Our arborist, I think, his number was 14 feet. And we feel like we can diminish that number a little, but not a lot, not all the way down to 11 feet. So we're treating that tree very carefully.
Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Schlow, I want to make sure I understand sheet A2. I think what you're doing is showing me with the dashed lines on 65, 67, 69, and 73 Ellenwood, that they're all encroaching into the front setback, and 65, 67, and 68 are encroaching into the side setbacks. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you, Mr. Slow. You said something earlier in response to another question about moving the garage further. I think you said west. I'm not sure the direction.
No,
foot, 1.2 feet or something.
To the east.
To the east.
To the east, not the west.
To the east.
The west, and
Meaning away from the property line, toward the tree.
that's correct. That's correct.
And when you say that, you're saying that additional foot is compared to what? Compared to existing conditions, compared to the existing wall, or compared to a previous design?
Compared to the existing wall,
Okay.
yeah.
So the existing wall is going to be further away from the property line than the existing wall?
That's correct. That's correct. It's going to be, well, it's going to be 2 foot 2, increased from 8 inches.
Okay, because our staff report says the existing is 4 feet 9 inches.
4 feet 9 inches is not the garage. 4
That's-
feet 9 inches
Is the house?
is the house. Yes.
Okay. I got it. That's why I was confused.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, and it looks like we have no speakers on this agenda item, so if there's any other last comments you'd like to make, you have 3 minutes to do so.
Well, I didn't write a rebuttal because I was hoping there wouldn't be one because we feel so strongly that we've dotted all of our I's and crossed our T's. I feel like the town of Los Gatos and their variance line items and descriptions, we've met all of those, all of that criteria, and what we're proposing to add to the house I just feel that after walking up and down Ellenwood numbers of times, and I've done several projects within 3 or 4 houses of here, I don't think what we're asking for is anything that is going to be objectionable to anyone. And it does get more cars off of the street. And other than that, everything's pretty quiet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And did you have a question, Commissioner? Okay, one more question.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to see if there was going to be any public comment before I asked this question. I was just wondering, have you spoken with any of the neighbors? Have you had any feedback from any of the adjacent properties about having an issue with the story poles or what you're proposing?
Mr. Lambert has. You want to come up here, Jean? And I have left one note at their back neighbor and asking them to call me if they had a concern, and I didn't receive any call, but I think Mr. Lambert has, there you go, John.
Yeah, we bought the property over
Oh,
a
and
year.
Mr. Lambert, if you could just give us your name and address for the record.
Yeah, I'm John Lambert, the owner of 61 Ellenwood, Los Gatos. So we bought the property over a year ago, but we only moved in probably about 6 weeks ago. When I bought the property, I did get introduced to some of the neighbors, especially the guys with the big houses across the road. Everybody's incredibly pleasant. And at that time, we already had a conceptual design, and I did discuss it with them in a generality, and everybody seemed quite happy about it. Since moving in, I've met more of the neighbors. I do know the owner of the property right next door at 63 Ellenwood. We worked closely together on the removal of the redwood that was damaging the garage. Incredibly pleasant. He's told me personally he will give me any support that I need, and he knows the design quite well. They are renting that house. I've met those guys that just moved in. They've got a year lease. Introduced to them yesterday, talked them through it. They were very supportive. The neighbors next to them, I've met them and discussed it with them in generality, had no problems. The neighbors up from them, so 3 doors away, she basically stopped by and said, "We're so happy to see kids in the area. I've got a little 2-year-old and a 4-month-old little girl." They said, "Hey, whatever you want to do to the house, it's great." We're fully supportive, and they knew Gary was on board, so they had a lot of trust in that too. The neighbors who are right behind us on the flag lot behind us, being introduced to them, they seem very pleasant. We didn't get a chance to go through design plans with them or anything, but as like Gary said, he tried to talk to them. I'm not aware that they would have any issues. They again were quite happy to see a young family, not talking for myself but talking for the kids, in there. So as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any issues, and we've tried to get to meet the neighbors as we can.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bourgeois, did you have any other
Thank you for that. Yeah, just one follow-up. I did my site visit over the weekend. I'm just curious how long the story poles have been up. I'm assuming if they're a flag lot behind you, they've had plenty of opportunity to see the story poles.
Yeah, at least 2 weeks now, I believe. It was Steve Babcock from Monterey who put them up. So.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
Thank you.
okay, so I will now close the public portion of this, and commissioners, if you have any comments, or if you would like to make a motion so that we can begin deliberations. Commissioner Johnson.
I have a comment that I'll throw out there, and if anyone is in agreement with me, then I would try a motion. I think the design is very innovative, it's very imaginative, and it is doing what it can to preserve the historic nature and siting of this property in a unique way. And I think that at least I could figure out a way to make findings in support of a variance. And I would be willing to make a motion to do so if I felt that there were any support among my fellow commissioners.
Okay, I saw Commissioner O'Donnell and then Commissioner Telesmore.
I would support the motion. I agree with you. I'm sure you will come up with language which will satisfy both, because you can. I mean, it's not narrow, and I agree with staff that they handle this the proper way. It could go either way, I think. So I just wanted to say yes, I would, not having heard it yet, but I probably would support your motion.
And Commissioner Telesford, did you have comments to make before
Yeah,
motions
the
made?
comment would be that, we look at variances on a all projects on a case-by-case basis, but especially for variances. And it's not that the existing rules shouldn't be applied in every case. It's just that in this case, I think that the existing rules would probably burden the project so that the solution for it wouldn't be as eloquent as it is. And I know that area quite well. And the one thing that I'm really appreciative of is that we're getting to save that beautiful sweep of front lawn, because that's a character-defining element to that area of that neighborhood. And to lose that in any way would just break my heart. So with that said, I would support a motion.
Any other comments? Commissioner Bourgeois?
I would support a motion to that well, but I would like a clarification from staff. I don't think I quite understand how granting this variance would then open up. Basically, they could do any other additions up to whatever 2.2 or whatever inches. I'm just concerned about the statement in the staff report about future work that could be done if we grant this variance. And if you could explain that to me a little better, it'd be great.
So the town code section listed in the staff report speaks vaguely about how existing non-conforming setbacks are utilized in proposed additions. So say 30 years down the road, they come back here and say, we want to do an addition on the first floor along that same side of the residence where they're doing the addition and attaching the garage. They could bring it up to 2 feet, 2 inches from the property line as what that garage establishes the setback at. I think there is the potential for you to add language to your approval that says this, that it's only for this, whether or not that's easily found 40 years from now to apply to another application, is questionable, but I think you have the ability to do that.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. Is there a way to condition this motion in that way?
And maybe the attorney.
Or maybe the town attorney can.
I know we've done deed restrictions in the past on second-story units where we said you couldn't have a kitchen, for example.
So we were just conferring on that same point, and the town attorney does feel that you can apply a condition that would restrict any further encroachments other than what's established already and what would be established with this garage addition, and limit the encroachment just to that garage. Or not garage addition, excuse me, the new garage.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I'd like to try a motion then. My motion would be to approve architecture and site application S10-034 based on our standard findings and conditions that we have contained in 2920-150 of the Town Code for Architecture and Site Applications. As planning commissioners have said, this is a very innovative design which takes into account the nature of the neighborhood and the nature of the property itself. And my motion is also to approve variance application V-10-001. And I believe that I can make the findings that are on page 4 of our staff report under section 2920-170 of the Town Code for granting a variance, that because of so we would have to find that there's special circumstances applicable to the property, including size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings. And I'm particularly focusing on location or surroundings because then when I look at page 5 of the staff report, under Historic Preservation Committee, our staff indicates that due to the historic character of the house with the detached garage, the historic character of the neighborhood, and the historic references addressed by the applicant, staff has sent this to the Historic Preservation Committee. So staff itself finds that there are unique features with respect to both the lot itself, the property itself, the house itself, and the surrounding neighborhood. And I would also point to the Planning Commission and the staff taking those very same factors into account on an application in Pennsylvania Avenue, where we were supposed to consider the historic nature of a lot and property in a neighborhood for a house that was not specifically designated historic, as this one is. So I think we can find that there are special circumstances, the strict application of which would actually place a burden on this property, which is not shared by other houses, historic houses in the area, which I pointed out in my question and are indicated in sheet A2, that do encroach onto setbacks already. So by changing the nature and character and conforming setbacks to this property alone, we would burden it and burden the neighborhood by creating an oddity in this very nice historic neighborhood. I can also find that the granting of a variance would not constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties. As I've just indicated, other properties encroach into the setbacks. We would actually place a burden on this property if we required them to either maintain a garage, which doesn't work and doesn't stand up, and we would burden the neighborhood and this house by, I don't want to say destroy, but I do want to say mar the historic character of the lot and the house. So by granting a variance, what we're doing is maintaining the status quo. I don't think we're varying anything. So I think I can make those two findings, and I incorporate the comments of other planning commissioners with respect to that. To the extent that this motion goes forward, I would add a condition, including those that are contained in the staff report, that should this variance be granted by the Planning Commission, that it be limited specifically to the new garage design as contained in the application before us tonight, and that to the extent staff believes it's appropriate, that deed restrictions be applied such that we can make sure that any variance that applies to the construction of the specific new garage that's proposed will be limited only to this application and not apply to any future applications for expansion. And I think that is my motion.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Bourgeois?
I'd like to second that. I'd also like to add to the evidence of the motion, in considering special circumstances for the variance, I'd also like to just note that the proposed garage actually is less of an encroachment than the existing non-conforming piece. So they are making an effort, but they are constrained by the tree, which I think also adds to the character of the neighborhood and is an important feature of that lot. So they're kind of squeezed in there. So I think that also constitutes additional special circumstances. So that's added in my second.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you have a comment?
I just have a question. Do we have to make a finding on the categorical exemption? I mean, it is categorically
Actually, yes,
exempt,
we do. Thank you for catching that.
Thank you for that. I will find that it's categorically exempt because it is a single-family residence. That's sufficient, correct?
Correct. And actually, this is an architecture and site application, so if you could just mention under Exhibit 2, the considerations and review of A&S.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think I mentioned 292150 already in my motion, so if I have to be more specific, I will be happy to do so. But I would indicate for architecture and site that this application, unlike many that we get, conforms with the residential guidelines, conforms with our historic guidelines, has been approved by the Historic Preservation Committee, has no neighborhood opposition, saves a tree, and does not put more impervious surface on a lot. So aside from the technical fact that it requires a variance, it does everything that we would normally want from an application.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. It passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Rooney or Ms. Propp, there are appeal rights?
There are appeal rights, and that's a 10-day appeal period, and that can be filed at the town clerk's office.
Okay, so we are now at, that takes care of our new public hearings. Under continued other business, do we have a report from community development?
We do. Commissioners, I just want to update you on some events that have happened and some events that are pending. As the commission is well aware, I'm sure, that the Albright Plan Development application was approved by the Town Council. Let me take that back and say it was actually introduced. The ordinance was introduced on August 1st, and it's going for second reading, which would be adoption on the 15th of August. The one thing I think is really important to understand that the project that the council saw is significantly scaled back from what the Planning Commission saw. And I think the council had the same feelings as many of the commissioners did in terms of the challenge with the range of the variety of uses and the quantity, shall we say, of the uses. So in the end, what was approved was up to 550,000 square feet of commercial office and up to 550, it's complicated to say this, it's up to 550,000 square feet of office or up to a certain percentage of office in 168 senior-only residential units. So I think the council felt that it addressed many of the concerns that were raised in terms of school impacts, traffic impacts, and I want to really clearly say that it's not 550 plus 168, it is once, if they opt to go with a senior project, then they have to offset some of that square footage on the office side, because what was studied was really the maximum, your 550,000 square feet of office, or some percentage of office and the residential component. There is a 5-year trigger in there, which means that the residential a building permit could not be pulled for the residential until 5 years after the ordinance was approved, which would be the 15th of August. So that'd be, what are we looking at? That was 2016. And so, again, I think it was significantly reduced from what this Planning Commission saw. That being said, on the 24th, and I'm jumping ahead, I also want to cover the 22nd, but on the 24th Planning Commission meeting, the architectural and site application for the Albright site will come to the Planning Commission. And I did want to stress that the council has narrowly defined the scope of review because they felt many of the issues that were involved in the Arkan site were really germane to the plan development in terms of the height of the buildings, the setbacks, as we called it, the wedding cake appearance, setting back the upper stories of the building. But you'll have a staff report that outlines the purview of the Planning Commission in regards to that. And this is just phase 1 of the project, which is 2 buildings, the 2 buildings off of Winchester. In addition, we're going to have a very long evening that night because in addition, I'm sorry.
I just want to make a comment about Albright. I'll make this comment at the meeting as well, but I'm going to recuse myself off of any kind of Netflix application. I realize they're technically not the applicant, but we're going to be reviewing their project. And as Commissioner Bourgeois said earlier, my husband has a source of income from Netflix, so I'll recuse myself.
The other items we have is a continued hearing on 16161 Short Road, which will be the first item since it was a continued item. And then we also have the sports park. So we're going to have a packed house. As I think we indicated in an email that we sent out to you, that we will have dinner for you. So we're starting at 6, and we did work with the chair and vice chair on securing that. We don't like to do that. We know it's difficult for commissioners to get here by 6, but otherwise we felt we'd be going past midnight. So we are providing dinner for the commission that evening. On the 22nd, we have the Planning Commission Town Council Retreat, and that will also be at 6 o'clock. That will be held at the Police Operations Building. And the 2 items we'll be discussing are the community benefit policy. And I think that's, we're working on the staff report for that right now, and I think that's going to offer a lot of alternatives. I think the Planning Commission and Council will have a good discussion on community benefit and how should we address it. There's about 3 or 4 different concerns we've heard about it that we're addressing and providing some alternatives to the Planning Commission and Council. The second item is really kind of a 2-part item. It's the entertainment permit process that the alcoholic beverage policy has required us to prepare. So we have done a fabulous survey of 9 different jurisdictions, and we have some recommendations on how to handle an entertainment permit process, as well as some revisions to the alcohol beverage policy. So that's going to be a packed night. There are a lot of discussion points with both of those topics. So we'll start right at 6 on that one. And then the only other thing I want to mention was, it was really is the September 14th Planning Commission meeting. And as I look at the agenda right now, it is extremely full. I'm trying to find it and I can't find it. Hang on. I just lost it.
Planning Commission should be towards the end.
Yeah, I know. I had it out and then I lost it. So there we go. One of the issues we're having is when we have continued items, as the Planning Commission's well, where it really then starts to kind of cascade our agendas, because we had planned our agendas out literally 2 months in advance. And so when we have projects continue, it does create problems, because when we finally get to schedule a project, the planner and the applicant have extensive conversations. Obviously, we have to work with them and make sure it works with their schedule as well as their consultant's schedule, that works with our agenda schedule, and then we try to balance out those meetings. When we have continued items, it really ends up cascading that, and it is literally kind of a, I don't want to call it a shell game, but it's a game of trying to move things around and try to keep applicants from being unhappy that their game placed on another agenda, generally a later agenda. So we do have a very busy agenda also on the 14th. And we will manage that, and we'll make sure that we balance that out. We may not have some happy applicants, and that's our responsibility to make sure that we try to provide a balanced agenda to the Planning Commission and to try to expedite those permits as fast as we can. So we will have 2 continued hearings that night now, though. We'll have Riviera Terrace and we'll have the Toll House. So we will then, we also have 4 other items not scheduled, tentative on the agenda that we'll have to move around because those 2 will have to stay. And often we, and why when the commission was asking questions about can we continue Riviera Terrace in this case to the 28th, a lot of commitment is made on both sides. And the commission always has discretion on that, but a lot of work goes into trying to schedule these projects, and there's a lot of give and take on all sides. So it's something I just want you to know and understand, and our goal, it's unfortunate that Riviera Terrace was continued because we thought we'd be able to balance, again, the calendars as much as possible by having it on this evening. So we do have a couple of heavy nights coming up. And then right now, we'll be moving some items to the 28th, September 28th, but at this point, it looks like that will be a lighter agenda unless we have some things that are scheduled that we're not aware of, yes.
Just throw this out. We're going to have a 6 o'clock meeting on the, I take it the 22nd and the 24th. I wonder if we should consider a 6 o'clock meeting on the 14th from what you're describing.
It's really, I think, the chair's discretion. We try to avoid, the community development department doesn't have control over the joint meetings. That's set by the town manager's office. So we didn't have control over the joint meeting with the council. We did work through the chair on the 24th, and I think that's the chair's discretion if she wants to go ahead and have that 6. We can accommodate that.
What would be helpful is, I know speaking just for myself, 6 o'clock meetings are extremely difficult to get to, and so I would like for commissioners to weigh in on realistically what time you can make. I get nervous because we had a quorum issue previously that we might not have quorum issues in the future, and so not only with, this is very helpful, but I know a couple months back you sent us the next 3 meetings ahead of time with the agenda items, and I understand they're tentative, but if you could continue to do that so that commissioners can take a look at those to make sure there are no conflicts and that any future quorum issues could be prevented. But I know 6 o'clock, excuse me, is very difficult for myself. Are there any others? I certainly can work my schedule around if there are necessities.
Could be 6:30 as easy as 6. My schedule obviously is different than someone with children and all that, so if 6 o'clock is inconvenient, I just throw it out. So
Sure.
6:30 or 7 is fine with me.
Okay. Commissioner Jensen?
I actually have a procedural legal question. Given that meetings are noticed to the public, and thank you for your presentation, but I didn't hear you mention the public in figuring out the agenda. do you have to renotice if you just change the time of the meeting? Because it seems like, how is the public supposed to know that they're supposed to show up at 6 o'clock on that? Don't you have to renotice it?
So we generally decide those before we notice the meeting at all. And generally, we know enough in advance before the 72 hours when the agenda is posted, both at Town Hall, the library, and online, what time that meeting's going to be. And we do give that advisory. In the case of a large project where we've decided ahead of time that it's a 6 p.m. meeting, then the neighborhood, any notices are already noticed for that time. So we generally do it ahead of time for certain items that we might hear earlier on a 6 or 6:30 calendar. It's generally not those large items that we notice if we've already noticed those for 7 p.m.
Yeah, I just have a genuine concern, actually, that the public understands that Planning Commission meets at 7 o'clock, and frequently we've been changing the meeting. Fortunately, I can usually make it at 6 o'clock, so it's not a big issue for me, but I'm concerned, the bigger the project, the more likely it is to start at 6 o'clock, and we've heard public comment that people don't get notice about various projects or whatever, so I'm just concerned that by changing the default start time, that we might eliminate public input that we otherwise would have, because members of the public can't actually make it at 6.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I'm respectful of that position, and that may be the compelling one, but I will tell you that being at meetings after 11 o'clock at night is also very inconvenient, and often the public gives up and goes home. So you have that difficulty. So to me, and I don't know, I think the chair is absolutely correct, we'd have to look at what the agenda is proposed to be, and if it looks like it's going to take 4 hours, then maybe we ought to move it up a little bit. But, I mean, I would certainly defer whatever the chair does. I just threw it out as something to think about. And I also agree that we have to, you know, the people we work for are the public. So we want to make sure they're aware of what's going on. And unless we can give the notice well in advance, I would be concerned, too, that they would try to go back to the default position. But I think if we give adequate notice, and more than adequate notice, we're going to save the public a lot of late night sitting around. So that's something that I would obviously defer to the chair to do. I just throw that out.
I defer to the chair as well, but I know I sound like an old fuddy-duddy. Like back in the day, we used to start these meetings at 7:30, and we often wouldn't finish till 2 a.m. So times they have changed, but you know, people would stay for them, and so it's just a matter of what you're used to, I guess. But my concern is that everybody, it seems to me that it's reasonable to have a time that a public meeting starts, start it then, everybody knows, make the notice. If it's unavoidable to change the time, that's fine, and I respect that's why we're doing it. But I have a real concern about it.
Okay, Commissioner O'Donnell, and then...
Final remark. I've been doing this for like 50 years. I've attended meetings at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've attended meetings that went on forever, and they were a mistake. I think it is a real mistake to have meetings go too late, because not only does either the council or the planning commissioners get tired and perhaps are not at their best, but all too often I've seen people who have children or people who have brains give up and go home. So I think it's swell that people used to work till 2 o'clock in the morning. I just don't think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Bourgeois and Telesphore, do you have any restrictions that you need to let us know as we start looking at future times on impacted schedules?
I would need to know a specific date,
Okay.
and I don't have my calendar in front of
Okay.
me, but I can, if with enough notice, I can usually make 6 o'clock work.
Okay.
Personally, I would rather start earlier than, Thursday mornings are almost always an early morning for me. I would rather start early than stay till 2.
Okay. And Commissioner Telesphore?
I can work my schedule around that, and I also would rather start earlier than later. I would think that, you know, if these meetings with the larger issues perhaps could be posted as well in the newspaper, that would certainly help.
And they certainly are. That is correct.
Well, they are in the back, but I was thinking more toward the front.
I just want to reiterate, we we will not schedule an item for a public hearing. We won't move the meeting to 6 o'clock, start it early, unless the public notices have gone out to the surrounding property owners as well as in the paper. That is at 6 o'clock. So that's why Mariko and I talked early enough to make sure that we got the public hearing notices out for the meeting on the 24th with the correct start time at 6 o'clock, and that's why we're engaging in this conversation now. Whether we could put another ad in the paper, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I could commit to that, only because of the cost of that. However, it is on our website, and it is posted at all the normal places, the library and at the town hall complex.
It wouldn't be an ad, it might be a point of interest that the newspaper editor might think it was important, and I'm sure he might. Just a little, thing in the front where they have those little tidbits on the side of I think it's the town section, something like that.
So just to recap, August 22, we start at 6 p.m., August 20, at the police operations, and that's at Los Gatos Boulevard, correct? August 24, we start at 6 p.m. here. And then, Ms. Rooney, did I hear you correctly that September 14, we have the 2 continued items, but there's also 4 that you're playing with?
At this point, there's 4 that have tentatively been scheduled there, but that's before Riviera Terrace was added, so we'll be moving at least 2 of those items to the 28th.
Okay.
And I'm just emailing staff right now to say, please send out these agendas in advance to the commissioners so that they can schedule those.
And Commissioner Bourgeois, you had a comment?
The Town Council Planning Commission retreat at 6, is there an end time? Is it like a 6 to 9, or is it open-ended as?
Generally, they do have an end time, and it's usually, I want to say it's even usually 8:30.
Okay.
I will say, just because I know we have 2 really important topics, I would plan 6 to 9.
Okay, but there's definitely a hard end time on that meeting.
That's how they have generally been since I've been here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Are we in commission matters now?
Yes, yes. Actually, before we move on, any other reports? Okay, we are now under commission matters.
Tagging onto what Commissioner Jensen said earlier, I wanted to let people know, I know over the past, 6+ years I've been on the commission, I've had to recuse myself from a handful of items because of the consulting firm I work for. I wanted to let the commission know that I'm no longer working for that firm. So the only item we had in the works that I had recused myself from is Albright, and I've spoken with the town attorney, and there's no reason for me not to be able to step back in on that at this point. So I just want to let the commission know, and I will be making that statement during the Albright hearing as well, so that the applicant is aware of why I'm no longer recusing myself. So.
Wonderful. And also I want to let you guys know, in case you hadn't heard, we do have a new commissioner. Margaret Smith was appointed, and I believe she will be at the retreat on the 22nd?
Yes.
Okay.
She'll be at the retreat, and then her first official night here will be the 24th.
Okay. And any other commission matters anyone else would like to share? Okay, well then we're adjourned. Thank you.